All right, so our next game is brought to us by another 5-star review on Stitcher. This one is from Kyle Latino. Says 5 stars, wonderful, fun, and informatish. I love the rapid fire ranking of 3 games an episode. The breezy format keeps the show conversational and entertaining, but heaven help you if you are the host with a low opinion of Bushido Blade. Listen to that episode. It's fun. I can't wait until they talk about Top Gear Rally for the Nintendo 64. So thank you, Kyle. We will talk about Top Gear Rally for the Nintendo 64.
Starring Jeremy Clarkson and the Stig. I had to put that in there. I'm sorry. I don't really know much about that show, but
So, well, let's go through the let's get through the formalities here. Top Gear Rally was developed by Boss Game Studios and published by Midway Games in the United States and Kimco in Europe. For the Nintendo 64, earliest release date and territory appears to be October 1997 in North America, which seems a little bit late, but it must be right. How many people played Top Gear Rally back in the day? Hands up.
I did not.
Oh.
Well, I do know that Top Gear actually has been a racing series that was originally established on the Super NES by Gremlin Graphics.
Yeah, the original games, they're kind of your typical British 16-bit racer where it's kind of Outrun-esque with a behind-the-car view, kind of a flat pseudo 3D view, but you've got other race to deal with.
The Super Nintendo ones are about as realistic as you were going to get on a Super Nintendo in a weird way. And I remember them mostly for being kind of like technically impressive more than they were fun, which is, well, that sounds like a diss, what I'm about to say, but being technically impressive, funness notwithstanding, which is a kind of a hallmark of a lot of these. It was made in the UK, right?
Right.
So
this plays a lot differently. This is more of a semi-realistic racing sim.
Semi-realistic, but the physics are bonkers. So it's kind of like, it's weird because this came out about the same time, I believe, as the first Gran Turismo, or it existed on the same shelves, so to speak. And Gran Turismo is a way more realistic game. And it even features rally racing, which is what this game is ostensibly trying to recreate. In a way, its unreality feels more different than regular racing than the rally modes do in Gran Turismo. So just to give you an idea like what rally racing is, it's usually like dirt track, like not exactly off-road, but not paved road, and you're supposed to have like a navigator who tells you which, how to turn, and you got to, there's a lot of memorization that goes into it and stuff like that in real life.
I don't think any of us are really into realistic racing games because this is the sort of game that wants you to choose your handling, it wants your suspension, what kind of tires you want, and I don't care about any of that. I just want to go fast, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's an intermediate grade between. I do like realistic racing games a little bit. There's a point where I kind of check out, but every now and then I want to really pretend like I'm a car geek and like learn a lot about displacement ratios and stuff like that. And it really is. It's not nearly as complicated as Gran Turismo. Let's put it that way.
Well, nothing is, but then again, nothing's quite as boring as Gran Turismo either. Top Gear Rally is
so. This is a game where your car can just like launch into space almost off of the like. That's what I mean when the physics are a lot closer to what you'd expect from Mario Kart than what you would expect from Gran Turismo. It also has a cool feature where you can do custom paint jobs on your car. Like drawing whatever you can manage to draw with the N64 analog stick. And for me, this mostly meant just drawing like blood splatters all over the front of the cars. I just never got tired of that. We call them like, we'd name the cars like, it's kind of this, it looked very Death Race. And the other cool thing about this game, and this is about all I can say about it. The other cool thing about this game is that the damage to your car when you hit another car, hit the wall, was super exaggerated for game purposes. Like in Gran Turismo, like I think you'll get damage to your car that isn't necessarily visible, at least in the games I play. I haven't played beyond the PS2 one.
Yeah, no, they deliberately, they actually said this, I believe, in an interview at some point where they basically said, look, we chose between like higher fidelity graphics or car deformation. We went, no, we want the cars to look freaking tremendous. So
right. In this game, the cars, in this game, the cars look, I mean, they look smoother in a way than the polygons look better than the Gran Turismo PlayStation games. You know, the models look better, but the textures are equally crap, and it's got that weird smudgy quality for the N64. But they do go all in on the car deformation. So like when you finish a race, and usually you're hitting cars all the time, like it's almost impossible to avoid it. And so when you finish a race, you get to see like your car is just completely like it looks like it's been through like a meat grinder. You know, it just looks like it's just on its way to the junkyard, and it has no effect on the handling of the car as far as I can recall. It just looks hilarious.
So
and that yeah.
They've done that also because it rewards you for driving well. You know, if you mess up, the game doesn't overly punish you. If you hit walls and stuff, the game is surprisingly generous. If I remember correctly, if we compare it to, again, Gran Turismo, you touch a wall in that game, your car basically goes into a dead stop and you lose the race. That's often what happens in Gran Turismo.
That's actually what I was going to bring up is, did anyone else have any big problems with controls? It feels like if you hold the analog stick for more than a second too long, you just swerve and smack right into a wall.
And what you're talking about is the dead zone in this game is about -3. Like you touch the controller even more than a millimeter or two either side, and it thinks that you want to turn 100% to the left, 100% to the right.
Yeah, it makes me
Can you tweak that though in the options?
I don't think so. I've read some reviews where people had also complained about the feather controls, where it's just like if you you really have to be gentle with the controller. Yeah, and it's because
it makes me think that like a racing wheel peripheral should have been released for the N64 like it was for Ridge Racer R4. But
I was going to say, I think it's important to understand that this is quite an early analog stick racing game. Like, it's really easy to forget that analog sticks didn't really exist at the time.
Right.
But it's true. You know, this is quite an early analog stick-based game, so they didn't... And these guys hadn't done that many racing games before, the company that made this one, so it feels like this may have even been their first racing game, and they had this Top Gear license from previous titles, I think. So the analog controls are not what you would expect, mostly because if you've used the N64 controller and you use the PlayStation analog sticks or the Xbox analog sticks, the N64 has got this very... it's a very short controller. You can only move it a little bit before you kind of tap out. You know, like the actual directions are pretty short. You kind of have off, slightly on, almost completely on, and fully, like, all the way down. So it feels like they couldn't quite get that balance right. And unfortunately, it means that you have to really be gentle with the controller. And I guess when you're playing a racing game, and this one is a realistic game, if we're being honest, it's trying to be realistic.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it's got that, and it's like, when you look at it, and if you compare it to a lot of the other N64 racing games, you expect it to be like Mario Kart, where you kind of slam the stick left and right, you know, you're like, yeah, I'm just going to do maximum left, maximum right. And if you do that, you crash.
Here's a loaded question for you. Why should I play this game if I already think F-Zero X is the best racer for the system?
You shouldn't. I mean, it's mostly a game like I can't recommend it to anybody for any purpose other than just the fun of. Well, I mean, it's a kind of realistic racing game where you can just go off the track and cheat, I believe.
The game is designed to let you cheat. They're very specific in the manual, and I think in the preview video that I watched of the game, like a VHS that's sent out to people to get them hyped up for upcoming games. Yeah. You know, they're like, you can take shortcuts, and it's like, oh, okay, cool.
It does seem like some levels have actually specifically designated off-road paths that if you master, you can really cut down your time. I at least like that aspect of it.
Well, it's because the game starts you at 20th place, and you're expected to come first, and that's really weird. It's not a pole position type racer where you start close to everyone else. No, it's more like Daytona, where everyone else has half finished the race, and you're at the very back.
Yeah, you're at a serious disadvantage. I mean, it's what I'll say about this is it's not like a perfect blend of arcade racer and realistic racing sim. It's more like a realistic racing sim that they realized, oh wait, this isn't any fun at all, and we can't really do this justice. Let's just allow players to go anywhere and kind of add in some arcadey elements to it and just make the physics totally nuts.
Well, I think because they wanted to go realistic with the physics, and then they must have started doing it, and they were like, "Oh wait, realistic physics are freaking impossible right now. Let's do something different then." This whole game is, in terms of where you position it, this is basically the realistic racing game in 1997 for someone who accidentally bought an N64 instead of a PlayStation for realistic racing games. You know, it's like somehow, you know, you love sports racing, you love actual racing realistic games, and you ended up with an N64 for whatever reason, and so it's like, well, what are my choices? There's like 3 or 4 realistic games on the entire system, and you know, there's only a couple of other realistic games. I think there's like a Formula 1 style racing game, and even something like Ridge Racer 64 is like as close as you get to realistic racing. That's kind of nuts that's as close.
I feel
as
like
you get.
Even if it's not the same type of racer, there's like, you should just play Ridge Racer instead. I don't think this game could offer anything that game could not.
I mean, the short answer is you should play a PlayStation racing game if realistic racing was your thing, because Gran Turismo set the bar super high.
But if you want to
nothing
paint
else.
blood splatters all over your front of your car as if you're playing like Death Race 2000 or something, this is the only game that's going to scratch that itch.
Well,
it takes a whole memory pack to store one of those, I think. Like,
Yes,
the whole
it
pack.
Yes, it does.
Well, there's all those in Sega Rally Championship, if we're talking about rally games.
Well, there's Colin McRae Rally on the PlayStation. Was a fantastic rally game, if I remember correctly. I haven't played that one since it came out, but I remember it being quite good.
So where do you put a game like Top Gear Rally? Like
That's the problem, because we don't really have any kind of reference point to go with on this.
No, but I mean, in a way, it just makes our job easier because we can say, "Hey,
Well,
it goes
does this
below
game
survival
do
arts."
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, does this game do a good job of doing what it wants to do? Probably not. Like,
No, because controls are a mess.
I'll give them. I'm just saying. I'm giving them credit for looking at a game that they probably started out. It's like it's going to be one way, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't any fun," and so they salvaged it, and it was definitely playable because I played a lot of it.
it's playable, which is a testament to the game that it is playable.
And it was fun even in single player.
It sure is a game, so I think we need to rank it where just a games go, if you catch my drift.
Well, I think part of this one is, you know, the main feature in this game is basically you can paint your car, which is kind of odd that that's the selling point once you sort of break down what this game does special. It's you can paint it.
And just the fun of seeing the ridiculous state your car is in when you finish a race is also kind of, you know, these are little, you got to grab the little pleasures while you can.
It tried to be a little bit better than it, like this game could have tried less and probably been as good,
there were definitely, like, I think there was an N64 game, what was it called? Automobili Lamborghini, that they like was supposed to come out like pretty close to launch and was delayed for years and is total garbage. So this is way better than that.
I think the problem with it is that it doesn't quite nail Gran Turismo style realism, but it also doesn't go far enough with like wacky craziness. Because, you know, something like Beetle Adventure Racing or these other like games that had you driving through cities and crashing through buildings and swerving through like fantasy environments and stuff. You know, they were like, that's really like fun and interesting. But this game kind of teases that, you know, like you kind of race in jungles and things are kind of a little bit less realistic than Gran Turismo, but, you know, it doesn't really fit either niche very well. How many people want kind of realistic racing that's kind of okay? That's the real problem with this game.
I guess nobody, but you could play this game and find yourself surprised by how much fun you're having, especially if you're a...
I mean, if you were exhausting the list of N64 racing games back in the day,
this goes pretty high on the list of N64 racing games, just because there's a lot of them, but most of them are one kind of game, and this is at least different. And they do stuff that the N64 could do. They make use of it. I don't know. I'm just saying. Like, look, it's not a masterpiece. It's not a game I would recommend to anybody. It's not a game I'm going to play again anytime soon, even though I do own it. But you know what? I'm just saying. I'm putting it below Survival Arts, above No One Can Stop Mr. Domino.
Wow.
That's fine. That's kind of the ranking for games I just don't want to play or really think about anymore.
I was actually going to place it even higher, but I am not going to be generous. I'm not a big fan of racers.
And here's my reasoning is that most of the games above that point are probably worse games than Top Gear Rally in a lot of ways. Like Friday the 13th is definitely a worse game in the playability front.
It's a lot more
Gekibo is also a worse, but they're more innovative.
Yeah, exactly.
And whereas Top Gear Rally is kind of like the innovation came when they realized they couldn't do the kind of game they started out making. Yeah. And so it's impressive in the sense that like, oh, well, they made a playable, fun game out of this that you wouldn't feel like you got cheated if you bought it. It kind of delivered on its promise, but not really. But just enough that you felt like, okay, I got something here. And but it doesn't really innovate. It's mostly a technical achievement. And in 1997 for the N64, like technical achievements don't carry a lot of water these days.
I thoroughly agree. And I think the main thing is all the value adding in this game, all the little things, none of them propel it above like a good racing game. Like you could add the customization to Gran Turismo. You can add the deformation to Gran Turismo, and it'd be like, yeah, cool, it's got it. But it's the fact that ultimately, that's like, yeah, I can do this cool stuff, but I could just play Destruction Derby or something, which is more like is more fun and still has car destruction or something. Racing. Nothing in this game makes it better as a game to play. It's just kind of like, yeah, it's neat, but I'll just play a better game after this.
For a racer to hold my attention, it really needs to have some little X factor in it that makes it stand out, and Top Gear Rally just really does not have any of that for me. It's kind of mediocre, I'm sorry.
And for me, this is just my own personal taste, nothing more, but I just find this sort of racing game just really dull. There's nothing that grabs me. I don't really see an appeal, but that's just me.
Play Wave Race.
I love Wave Race.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah,
Play Wave Race.
It was an even earlier a launch game for the N64, wasn't it?
It was a launch game. It definitely it's kind of pretty damning to say that Top Gear Rally it feels a little bit like Wave Race in a lot of ways.
But Wave Race is on water and this more innovative.
Yes, that's
there's
a
Wave
jet
Race.
ski
There's
game.
F-Zero X.
Wave Race is the game to play. But if you played Wave Race and you want to see what Wave Race is like with cars, Top Gear Rally.
Yeah, but then there's Extreme G.
I think we're done. We're done.
He's trying to say before someone mentions Hydro Thunder.
I love
and
Hydro
it's
Thunder.
too late now.